There comes a point in some men's lives when other people's opinions simply stop carrying the weight they once did. When he was younger, approval mattered. He wanted to be respected by his friends, appreciated by his family, admired by the woman beside him, and recognized by the people he worked with. If somebody was disappointed in him, it bothered him. If someone misunderstood his intentions, he wanted to explain himself. If people criticized a decision he made, he might spend days wondering whether he had done something wrong. But after 60, a man has something his younger self didn't have: decades of evidence. He has watched people praise him when he was useful and criticize him when he finally said no. He has sacrificed to keep people happy, only to discover that yesterday's sacrifice quickly becomes tomorrow's expectation. He has explained himself to people who had already decided not to understand him. Eventually, he realizes that pleasing everybody is impossible. And once that realization truly settles in, approval begins losing its grip on him. Before we go deeper, tell me where you're watching from today. Are you watching from the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, or somewhere else in the world? Drop your city or country in the comment section below. I always enjoy seeing where the men in this community are watching from, and it gives us a chance to connect. Now, here's what makes this man different. You can disagree with him without destroying him. You can criticize his choices without automatically changing them. You can call him selfish because he finally said no, and he may simply accept that you have the right to think that. He isn't trying to become difficult. He simply reached an age where being true to himself matters more than being approved by everybody else. And when approval can no longer be used as leverage, a man becomes much harder to control. Another thing that begins losing its power over some men as they get older is guilt. And this one matters because guilt can control a man for years without him even realizing it. Think about how often a man hears things like, "If you really cared about me, you would do this. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" A good husband wouldn't say no. A good father would find a way. Your family needs you. When he's younger, those words can hit him hard. He doesn't want to disappoint anyone. He doesn't want his children thinking he's a bad father. He doesn't want his wife questioning whether he loves her. He doesn't want relatives telling everyone that success has changed him, so he says yes. He gives the money. He solves the problem. He changes his plans. He takes on another responsibility. He apologizes even when he's not convinced he did anything wrong. But after decades of doing this, he begins recognizing something. Not every feeling of guilt means he is guilty. Sometimes guilt is simply what he feels when somebody doesn't get the answer they wanted from him. That realization changes everything. Now, when someone says, "If you loved me, you would," he can ask himself, "Is this actually about love? Or are you trying to make me uncomfortable enough to change my decision?" He can love his adult children and still refuse to solve every financial problem. He can care about his partner and still maintain a boundary. He can support relatives without becoming responsible for their lives. And this is what makes him frustrating to people who once knew exactly which emotional button to press. The button still exists. He simply recognizes when somebody is pressing it. Once a man learns the difference between genuine responsibility and manufactured guilt, controlling him becomes considerably more difficult. Then there is another change that can make an older man extremely difficult to control. He stops wanting so many things from the world. When he was younger, there may have been plenty to chase. The promotion, the impressive house, the expensive car, the recognition, the lifestyle that told everyone he had made it. Maybe he wanted to walk into a room and be respected before he even opened his mouth. Those desires aren't automatically bad. They can motivate a man to build an incredible life. But by the time he reaches his 60s, he may begin asking himself, how much of this do I actually still need? And his answer can surprise everyone around him. Maybe he doesn't need another promotion. He doesn't care whether somebody else's house is bigger. He isn't trying to impress strangers with what he drives. He doesn't need to be invited everywhere, praised constantly, or treated like the most important person in the room. He has started wanting less. And there is tremendous freedom in that, because people can only tempt you with things you desperately want. They can only threaten to remove something if you're terrified of losing it. The man who desperately needs status can be controlled through status. The man who desperately needs praise can be controlled through praise. The man who needs everybody to admire him can be pushed into doing ridiculous things just to protect that image. But what do you offer the man who is already satisfied? What do you threaten him with? This doesn't mean he has lost ambition or stopped enjoying life. It means his definition of enough has changed. He may value a comfortable home, financial security, his health, meaningful relationships, and control over his own time far more than another symbol of success. And when a man stops needing the world to constantly give him something, the world loses many of the tools it once had to influence him. By the time a man reaches his 60s, he has usually seen enough human behavior to recognize things much faster than he did when he was younger. He has heard beautiful promises before. He has watched people apologize and then repeat the same behavior. He has seen someone become unusually friendly when they needed something, disappear when he needed them, and return months later acting as though nothing happened. So now, words don't impress him as easily. Someone can tell him, "I've changed." He watches. Someone says, "You can trust me." He remembers. Someone promises, "It will never happen again." He doesn't argue with the promise. He simply compares it with everything that person has already shown him. This is one of the advantages of living long enough to collect decades of experience. You begin recognizing familiar behavior wearing different clothes. The names change, the faces change, the circumstances change, but certain behaviors begin looking very familiar. And this older man doesn't necessarily announce what he has noticed. That's important. When he was younger, he might have confronted someone immediately. He wanted explanations. He wanted to know why they behaved that way. He might have spent hours trying to prove that he could see what they were doing. Now, he simply makes a mental note. You lied when telling the truth would have been easy. Noted. You only called when you needed something. Noted. You disrespected him and later pretended it was a joke. Noted. He doesn't need to turn every observation into an argument. He is watching whether your behavior confirms or contradicts what he has already learned about you. And once enough evidence accumulates, something changes. He stops giving your words the benefit of the doubt and starts giving your history the benefit of the evidence. That's why manipulating an experienced older man can become difficult. You're not only dealing with what he sees today, you're dealing with everything life has already taught him to recognize. Something else begins disappearing as a man gets older: his desire to argue with everybody who disagrees with him. A younger man may spend an entire evening trying to prove a point. He explains what happened, brings up examples, repeats himself 3 different ways, and becomes frustrated because the other person still refuses to understand him. At 65, he may look at that same situation very differently. He has learned that not every disagreement deserves his energy. Some people aren't asking questions because they want to understand. They want another opportunity to challenge his answer. Some arguments aren't conversations at all. They're attempts to wear him down until he finally gives in. Once he recognizes that, he stops participating. You tell him he's wrong, he says, "Okay." You accuse him of being selfish because he won't do what you want. He doesn't spend an hour proving that he's a good person. You deliberately misunderstand something he said. He may correct you once. After that, what you choose to believe becomes your responsibility. And this can confuse people who remember the younger version of him. They expect resistance. They expect explanations. They expect to push one more time and eventually get the response they want. Instead, they meet silence. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he has finally understood the price of constantly defending himself. Time, energy, attention. 3 things that become increasingly valuable when a man realizes he doesn't have unlimited years ahead of him. So he becomes selective about where he spends them. And sometimes that means allowing another person to walk away believing whatever they want. Because he no longer needs to win every argument. He needs to protect the life he still has left. And once a man would rather leave a pointless conversation than win it, one of the easiest ways of controlling him disappears. One of the biggest changes that can happen after 60 is that a man begins separating himself from all the roles he has carried for decades. For most of his adult life, he may have been somebody's provider, somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's employee, somebody's problem solver. People knew exactly where to find him when something went wrong. The car breaks down? Call him. Someone needs money? Call him. There's a family disagreement? Somehow he's expected to fix it. Something needs to be handled at work? Give it to him. Year after year, responsibility becomes so normal that he may eventually confuse what he does for people with who he actually is. Then retirement comes. The children become adults. His career slows down or ends. And suddenly he has space to ask a question he may not have seriously considered in decades. Who am I when nobody needs anything from me? That question can change a man. He begins realizing that he doesn't always have to be available. Every family emergency doesn't require his intervention. Every problem his adult children create doesn't require his money. Every unhappy person around him doesn't require him to become their emotional repairman. He can care without carrying everything. And some people will not like this version of him. They may say, he's changed, they're right, he has. But what they call selfishness may sometimes be a man finally discovering that his entire existence doesn't have to revolve around being useful to everyone else. For decades, his value may have been measured by how much he could provide, solve, tolerate, and sacrifice. After 60, he may begin measuring his life differently, not by how many people depend on him, but by whether he still recognizes the man underneath all those responsibilities. And once being needed stops defining him, obligation becomes much less effective as a way of controlling him. Perhaps one of the hardest discoveries a man can make later in life is realizing that some people valued him more for what he provided than for who he actually was. He may not notice this when he's younger because he's constantly doing things for everyone. He's paying bills, helping relatives, solving problems, lending money, giving advice, providing transportation, making phone calls, opening doors, and showing up whenever somebody needs him. His phone keeps ringing, so naturally he assumes he's surrounded by people who care about him. Then he gets older and starts doing less. Not because he has become cruel, but because he no longer wants to spend every year of his life rescuing adults from problems they should be learning to handle themselves. And that's when he begins seeing something uncomfortable. Some people stop calling, others become irritated because the man who always said yes has started saying no. A relative who once described him as generous suddenly calls him selfish. An adult child who contacted him constantly becomes distant when financial help is no longer automatic. Even certain friendships begin fading when he's no longer the person arranging everything, paying for everything, or solving every crisis. That realization can hurt. Because now he has to ask himself, did you actually value me, or did you value having access to what I could do for you? And once a man has asked that question enough times, his standards change. He becomes far more careful about who receives his time, money, attention, and effort. He starts noticing the people who call when they don't need anything, the ones who check on him instead of only bringing him another problem, the people who can hear no without changing how they treat him. Those relationships begin meaning more, because after decades of being useful, he finally understands the difference between being needed and being genuinely valued. And once he understands that difference, using his generosity to control him becomes much harder. As a man gets older, he may also become far more protective of his time and emotional energy. This doesn't necessarily mean he dislikes people. It doesn't mean he has suddenly become antisocial, bitter, or incapable of enjoying company. He may still enjoy a good conversation, spend time with family, meet an old friend for lunch, or attend gatherings when he genuinely wants to be there. The difference is that he no longer believes he has to be available to everyone. He has spent enough years sitting through conversations he didn't enjoy, attending events out of obligation, answering calls he didn't want to answer, and remaining around people who left him mentally exhausted afterward. Eventually, he starts paying attention to how he feels after certain interactions. Some people leave him feeling lighter. Others somehow turn every conversation into complaints, gossip, demands, arguments, or another problem they expect him to solve. So he becomes selective. He may decline an invitation without providing a detailed excuse. He may let the phone ring when he doesn't feel like talking. He may spend an entire Saturday doing absolutely nothing important and feel no guilt about it. To someone watching from the outside, his world may appear smaller. To him, it feels cleaner. He has realized that access to him is not something everybody is automatically entitled to. His time belongs to him, his attention belongs to him, and after decades of giving both away whenever somebody asked, choosing where they go becomes a form of freedom. This is also why social pressure becomes less effective. You cannot easily control a man by threatening to exclude him when he doesn't desperately need to be included. You cannot frighten him with an empty weekend when he knows how to enjoy his own company. He hasn't withdrawn from life, he has simply stopped treating constant social availability as proof that he's living one. There is another reason some older men become so difficult to control. They stop being afraid of what will happen if someone walks away. Earlier in life, losing a relationship can feel terrifying. A man may tolerate behavior he doesn't respect because he doesn't want his marriage to end. He may keep a friendship alive long after it has become one-sided because they've known each other for 20 years. He may keep giving to relatives because he's afraid that saying no will create distance in the family. So people learn something about him. They learn that his fear of losing the relationship can be used to influence his decisions. But that leverage can disappear with age. By his 60s, he has already survived losses he once thought would destroy him. People have left. Friendships have ended. Children have grown up and built lives of their own. Colleagues he saw every day have disappeared after retirement. Some people he loved may no longer even be alive. And yet, he's still here. That changes the way he responds when someone threatens him with distance. He doesn't necessarily beg them to stay. He doesn't immediately abandon his boundaries to restore the relationship. And he doesn't chase someone endlessly simply because they expected him to. Sometimes he lets them go. This is what surprises people who were accustomed to the younger version of him. They assume silence will make him nervous. They think withdrawing affection will make him surrender. They expect him to come running back with another explanation, another apology, or another compromise. But days pass, then weeks, and he doesn't come. Not because he never cared, but because he finally understands that caring about someone and needing them at any cost are two very different things. Once a man knows he can survive your absence, threatening him with it loses almost all of its power. And when you put all of this together, you begin to understand why some men become almost impossible to control as they get older. It isn't because they've become heartless. It isn't because they suddenly believe they know everything. And it certainly isn't because they want to spend the rest of their lives fighting against everyone around them. Something much deeper has changed. They've simply reduced the number of things they're afraid to lose. Approval doesn't control them like it once did. Guilt doesn't automatically produce a yes. Status doesn't impress them enough to make them sacrifice themselves chasing it. Being misunderstood doesn't keep them awake all night. And the possibility that somebody might leave no longer terrifies them into accepting behavior they don't want in their lives. That's freedom. Because think about it. How do you control a man who doesn't desperately need you to approve of him? How do you manipulate a man who recognizes guilt when it's being used against him? How do you threaten a man with exclusion when he is perfectly capable of enjoying his own company? And how do you frighten him with losing something when experience has already taught him that life continues after loss? You don't. That's why this stage of a man's life can be so misunderstood. People may say he's stubborn, selfish, distant, difficult, or that age has changed him. Maybe age did change him, but perhaps decades of experience simply taught him where his energy belongs and where it doesn't. Men, if you've reached this point in your own life, tell me in the comments, what stopped mattering to you as much after you got older? And if these conversations speak to your experience, subscribe and join us for the next one. Because the hardest man to control isn't necessarily the strongest man in the room. It's the man who finally realizes he can live without the things everyone thought they could use against him.